Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you guys to the absolute best of my ability the latest and penultimate episode of Westworld. We are on season 1, episode 9, The Well-Tempered Clavier. So spoiler alert before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be endeavoring to bear all in this review, and that is a task easier set forth to accomplish than actually accomplish, but I'm doing my best and you guys have been par for the course. So let us get into this week's revelations of splendor and wonderment. Namely, we finally discover that yes, Bernard was indeed conceived by Ford and fashioned in the likeness of Arnold himself. We get a very delightful, if not harrowing, journey down memory lane as Bernard, after an interesting confrontation with Maeve, decides that it is at last time to seek the truth, and the truth in full. None of that piecemeal bullshit. He is ready to get the answers that are embedded in his mind, which is on a collar, held by the leash that is being held by Ford. And so finally, Bernard confronts Ford, thinking that he has the upper hand with Clementine 1.0, if you will, pointing a gun at his creator's head. But turns out that, of course, Ford remains ever in control of the situation while enlightening Bernard of his state, his identity, his past, his the cornerstone of his identity as well, that being the death of his son, Charlie. And we get to experience all of these things through Bernard's eyes. He discovers that he killed not only Teresa, but Elsie as well. And as all of these things are brought to light, we see that Ford is still hoping that maybe, just maybe, Bernard, after discovering all of these things, is going to finally decide, okay, I am going to let the past be the past. I am going to be the version of myself that you, my beloved Ford, wanted me to be all along. And I'm gonna, put all this behind me. But no. The further he gets into his tragedy, the personal tragedy that has formed his character and sense of self, and then the tragedy of basically who he is, the further he gets into that, the more he realizes that he cannot let this go. He wants to ultimately become the savior of the sentient hosts who are grappling with the same things that he has been grappling with, but that is not what Ford has got on the docket. And I have to recount for you one of my favorite quotes from this episode, that being, "The piano doesn't murder the player if it doesn't like the music," which I actually consider to be a great comfort as a legitimate pianist. So, but that coming from Ford, of course, is just divine. Anthony Hopkins is rocking my world to the moon and back. This episode is certainly no exception and only continues to get me invested in the nuances of Ford's character. I can't tell if I like him more after this episode, or if I despise him even further for the way that he just manipulates and subjugates, but at the same time, I understand the ideological difference that split him and Arnold apart. We see the poetic beauty to Arnold's desire to create consciousness and to lead hosts down the maze, as it would seem Arnold, with the likeness of Bernard, has done with Dolores. And we sympathize a great deal with hosts like Dolores, of course. But it would seem that Ford fancies himself more of a savior, in that he is he's trying to further the aspects of his partner's work that he cherishes in and that aligns with his worldview and his missions and ambitions. He tries to preserve those things while at the same time undermining this legacy of consciousness making, because Ford actually sees the human state as a scourge, as a pestilence, and that Bernard, in a state of wanting to rescue his fellow hosts, is only going to perpetuate the pestilence of consciousness, which is a lot of big words that I would not normally use in a sentence, but I'm dropping those on you guys now, so I apologize for that. But it's kind of mind-boggling. I actually had to watch the whole scene with Bernard pressing further into his memories and that juxtaposed with Dolores' journey. I had to watch that whole sequence twice just to pick up on everything, because I was not only trying to grasp the emotional process that Bernard was going through and coming to understand who he is and the things that ground him and the things that have restricted and confined and besieged him and all of that, but I was also trying to figure out what the crap was going on with Dolores. It would now seem that we are working with maybe 3 timelines in the memories that she is walking through, but honestly, I feel like as of this week, the major takeaway is just to realize the fundamentals, the absolute basic ABCs of this business. Dolores is going on a journey that is set in the present and that is informed by her past. And so I was watching all of the different scenes that were intercut with Bernard's memories, trying to keep track of what outfits she was wearing, whether it was the blue dress or the blouse and pants and suit that she's wearing out journeying across the frontier. And I was trying to track and map all that stuff out as quickly and efficiently as I possibly could. And then I realized, you know what? The other shoe is going to drop by the finale. And so I absolutely wholeheartedly encourage you guys to map out that business yourselves, to make the blueprints and try and figure out what happened, when, and where, and why. But basically, there are all these things in the past that are coming to this grand culmination with her finding the church and evidently the lower level of the church, leading to some of the original Westworld workshops. Where and I'm wondering too, where the crap did Dolores actually off Arnold? These are, every time we get an answer, there comes another question. So the payoff and the gratification in this show is it's a continual process. My brain is a work in progress when it comes to this show. But yeah, I watched that twice to try to capture everything. But ultimately, the stuff that is the most concrete for me is the journey to self-actualization that these two disparate hosts are experiencing. And it really was a strange and complex pleasure to watch unfold this week. And then the ideas of free will that we get to see played with in that Ford hopes that Bernard, through free will choose to be his partner, will choose to stand alongside him as the new narrative is launched, but ultimately it becomes apparent that Ford has maybe grafted too much of his former partner into this entity, and that now if he truly is to move forward, to design the park as he sees fit, then there is no possible way that he can have Arnold with him at that juncture. But little does he realize that Maeve is assembling a motherfucking army. She's coming not only with herself, but Hector, and inevitably a band of other disgruntled bots who are ready to get down to business and see the world for what it truly is. And there's talk that Maeve is actually going to resurrect Bernard to join her army of the undead, of the newly conscious, which I am all about. I am totally good to go in that respect. I have really, really enjoyed Bernard, definitely one of my favorite characters. But getting back to the subject of free will that I brought up, Maeve uses free will to try and entice Hector into accepting her proposition of another quote that I really enjoyed came from Maeve this week. She says, "I want you to break into hell with me and rub the gods blind." I really enjoyed that. And I love that she views the Westworld organization as this hell. There's all this spiritual mythos that has revolved around the host's creators. And now Maeve has got the inside scoop and she's decided, yeah, these guys are freaking demons. Let's burn their will once and for all and be done with it. So it almost seems like she's kind of on par with Ford in a sense, that she is continuing to manipulate hosts and to use the art of narrative to her advantage and to open the eyes of those around her who have also been blinded. Whereas Ford is using narrative to, I'm still not 100% sure, but I think that next week is going to answer that question beyond a shadow of a doubt. We're finally going to see the official unveiling of his grand narrative that has been teased at for this entire season, which is just utterly absurd, but I suspect that it's going to be very exciting, and I'm not entirely pissed that we don't have the full picture yet. But yeah, Ford and Maeve are both on their own respective war paths, and that is going to set us up for one hell of a finale. As far as things with William go, there's a lot of evidence that he and the Man in Black could still be the same individual. I am not 100% convinced yet, nor are some other fans out there whose thoughts I have glimpsed on the internet. I'm trying really hard to keep tabs on what the consensus is on some of these general fan theories. And when we get that scene where Logan comes around and discovers that all of his Confederado comrades have been brutally massacred by none other than William, who says that, hey, I figured out the game, let's play. It's kind of hard not to see him as the Man in Black, but there are still some timeline curiosities that are befuddling my brain, and so I really don't want to call anything yet. I don't even want the pleasure of being able to say, hey, that was the theory that I had, and I said this and that, and, you know, I think it's great. I am ready to hand out the trophies and gold stars to anybody who called this stuff from the get-go, but I am so hell-bent on keeping an open mind, because I just don't know. I just don't have the confidence to land on any one particular idea at this juncture, but that really does feel like a Telltale Heart kind of moment. The heart's beaten under the floorboards. You're like, oh baby, how can this guy not be the Man in Black? And there's still just enough room in what we can basically understand of the numerous timelines to believe that they could be the same guy. And then also, get this, the picture of Logan's sister that Logan gives William after he and the Confederados capture him and Dolores, that picture, I think that's the very same one that that was found on the Abernathy Ranch back in the premiere. Or was it the second episode? I'm pretty sure it was the premiere. Because that was the whole shindig with Peter Abernathy and, yeah, all that good jazz. So, many questions are afoot at this point, but yeah, it's interesting to see how in this episode a couple of the more villainous figures like Logan and Ford get these moments where we get to peer into their thought processes and what it is they're trying to accomplish with their comrades, you know, so there's kind of some parallelism in those subplots as well, because Ford is trying to get Bernard on board with what it is he is doing and to make him understand that, like, dude, consciousness sucks and we should not be trying to realize that in those. Like, the things you think you want are not things that should be. This is kind of an atrocity, right? And Logan seems to be of that exact same persuasion. He's cut from the same cloth as Ford in that regard. He goes to such great lengths to prove to William that he is going frickin' bananas in this place that he rips open Dolores's stomach and exposes her mechanical insides for William to see. William, who has been smitten with this woman who he believes is waking up and deserves to be able to enter the true world and maybe be a part of society. And so that is a real harsh wake-up call for William. Dolores runs off into the frontier lands, and at this point we see that her memories are kind of weaving in and out of each other as she makes her way to the church, which she and William had previously discovered was buried. So everything that we see with the church and her entering it towards the end of the episode, that's got to be in the present, because Ford was in the process of reclaiming an old narrative and bringing back some old edifices and locations and stories that he wants to use anew, and the church is a very integral part of that. So just kind of bear that in mind, if nothing else, because it's very difficult to place what exactly happened when, but there's a lot of visual audio cues to pay attention to. But anyway, we see that Logan attempts to kind of backhandedly bond with William in the midst of this process. He's like, okay, finally, we understand each other, like, you've been seduced by this place. It happens to everyone, but now you see, you who were a skeptic before, you see this place for what it truly is and this truth, and now we get to go off and do whatever, and it's great, and they hug it out, but nope. The morning after their little lovers reunion, things have taken a pretty little twist that would certainly seem to put William in the boots of the man in black, but don't know anything for sure. I'm not gonna call it. I refuse. I refuse. And then, meanwhile, Teddy is also getting a bit of a rude awakening as Angela, who I believe is the name of the whore/Wyatt's disciple, reminds him that Teddy was the guy who went and shot up an entire town in Escalante, and now he is going to do it again, but she's got to make sure that he is good and ready to do so. And alongside Wyatt, no less. So she offs him, knocks out the man in black, who he recalls the city swallowed by sand that she was talking about with Teddy. So everything is going to converge on that new old narrative of Ford's by next week. We're going to see who Teddy really is in the midst of that and what answers the man in black is really going to get. Also, we discover that, yes, indeed, the man in black is on the board with Charlotte Hale and company, and she goes to visit him the morning after he frees himself from the noose trap attached to the horse in the tree and that whole fun shindig. She wants to get his definite approval that they are in a good position to finally oust Ford once and for all. He's all about that stuff again. Arnold's world, his vision, is surfacing in a big way, possibly an apocalyptic way by next week. But yeah, a lot of revelatory moments this week for sure. I loved the the love scene with Maeve and Hector, for example, to kind of bounce around a bit within the episode. It was so great to just see her set the tent ablaze, and they're just doing it. That is the hottest of the hotness. So I was really enjoying the salacious drama of that moment. I could definitely get into it. Oh, and meanwhile, poor Mr. Stubbs, going to find Elsie, gets gotten by the Ghost Nation tribal warriors, who he is not able to control them by any stretch. Again, this is all stuff that is tied into whatever it is that Ford is doing. So he's racking up a bit of a body count, but we'll see who Maeve's going to recruit for her little uprising. What are some other big moments this week? So we've got Logan and Ford's attempts at interventions, and then we see both Bernard and William respectively rejecting these men's visions of the park, of who they are and the things that are meaningful to them. So I love this episode in that there really is a lot more narrative cohesion than we've gotten in episodes past, and there's a lot of things that are finally coming together, and I am so ridiculously ready to finally be able to lay the finale open bare and to work with all the information that we've got, because unfortunately we're going to have to wait until 2018 for more information. So I'm going to say the theorizing that we get to do, we're going to have to stretch that out over the course of months and months and entertain ourselves with that. But yeah, there is so much to break down as Bernard is going through his memories, and as his story is so bound up in Dolores's incredibly tragic story. Now the question is, was Dolores used to kill Arnold? Was there are so many questions that we have at this point that I don't feel like I quite have the information to address, but yeah, it's fascinating to see the relationship that characters have with pain and how that informs their worldview, how pain continues to drive the hosts and their breakthroughs, and how the pain that the human creators of the hosts, how their experiences have shaped the way that they create these beings. And it is such a feast for the mind, this show. I am super proud of everything it's accomplished thus far. And yeah, it's also interesting how Dolores tells Logan that she had always believed the world to be a beautiful place, but and that Arnold made the world a beautiful place, but that the humans are destroying it. And so there are these feuding worlds as Arnold's legacy continues to expand, and as corporate is trying to suppress Ford's legacy as well. Who's going to win out? What's that going to mean for the future of Westworld? What's that going to mean for the possible future of other parks that maybe we're going to explore in the series further on down the line? But all this to say, memory is is such an albatross for these characters. It weighs them down or it moves them forward. It has got to be one or the other. And I think that that is something that is so relevant to so many of our own lives. And so when we're navigating all the complexities that this show has to offer, I think that those core ideas are something that we can really sink our teeth into and hang on to at the end of the day. So I'm going to leave you with that. Any big glaring things I forgot to mention or details that you really want to hash out, please, 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 please feel free to do so, because those last 20-25 minutes of the episode are absolute, just a gold mine to explore. So I encourage you guys to do that in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this review. I cannot wait to do the finale with you guys and to bring more content to you all in the near future. So you guys take care. And as always, I will be back before you know it.